There is a person you want. There is a person you want something from that they cannot give you and they will never be able to give you. It's not a favor, it's not something underneath that. You want them to look at you and only you. Settle the question of whether you are real or not. Because usually we suffer from an identity crisis, and you probably have noticed that they do not give you, and you probably noticed that when they give you attention, it does not settle anything, that deep desire in you that lasts for days, and then you need it again. The appetite is not a defect, it was never a defect, it's just an equipment that you have. It's an enormous need. It was built for something that does not need you at all, and it's not lacking. So when you look at other people who are finite, people who are incapable of not needing you, you would be certainly unsatisfied. It goes sideways when it cannot reach the infinite and installs the nearest available human in the slot, and that condition is being treated by the Psalms and talked upon by the Psalms. Psalm 72. One thing to hold as we read and when we talk about the Psalms is that the person who wrote it is not watching a person, he is watching a class, a wicked people, or rather a group of plurals, the way through. If yours is one specific human being, that changes nothing about the mechanism. It only makes it harder to see, for that usually the problem is that we stare directly at the abyss and we are unable to recognize that it is the abyss. The problem is obviously an abstraction, and a face is not really an abstraction. So this is the psalm. It's Psalm 73 in the Hebrew numbering and 72 in the Catholic Orthodox Christian numbering, and it's a couple of verses written by Asaph, and he was trying to talk to God, the God of Israel, and I have analyzed it and ended up reaching a conclusion. You can go to that psalm, read it out, and I want you to focus on the verse number 3 when he says, "And why? Because I was envious of the wicked, seeing the peace of sinners." That was usually seen as the diagnosis of the whole psalm. In the 10th verse, he says, "On account of this shall my people return here, and full days shall be found in them." You would go at the 13th and see that, "And I said, then I have kept righteousness in my heart, and washed my hand among the innocent to no avail." And in the end, it goes into justice, verses of judgment. "And I, being set at naught, also knew it not. I became like a beast before thee." To then you would see the 25th talking about the weight of potentially desire, which the whole psalm in itself doesn't mention desire until the end, showing you that the weight is not these 25th and 27th. It's showing you that the weight is not because, lo, those removing themselves from thee shall perish. Thou hast destroyed all those being unfaithful to thee. But it is good for me to hold fast to God, to put my hope in the Lord, that I may declare all thy praise in the gates of daughter Zion. For that this is not the weight, rather the weight was in the desire. And we would try to look at what the Greek tries to tell us. In the 3rd verse, "I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." Or, "I was envious of the wicked, seeing the peace of sinners." This is the word in Greek, which I cannot read because I can't read Greek that well. But you would see that the object of envy is not goods, but untroubledness. That word is the same root Paul uses and puts in the vice list, and James puts in 3:14 and 16. Here is James 3:13, 14, 15, and 16. From here on, But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, don't boast and don't lie against the truth. This wisdom is not that which comes down from above, but is earthly, sensual, and demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition are, there is confusion and every evil deed. The same word here for untroubledness is used. I was envious of the wicked seeing the peace of sinners. The envy is not good, but untroubledness. In vain I have kept my heart pure. I have kept righteousness in my heart to no avail. Kept righteousness in my heart. The Paulian verb makes the wage complaint explicit as a payment scheme. This renders it as a payment scheme. It troubled me deeply. It was too toilsome. His labor, not distress, he worked at it, and the worked field strengthens not an argument but a location, and then it ends with, then I understood the final destiny, or the end, that the sanctuary gives him the end of the story, not better arguments. I was a brute beast before you. Earth has nothing I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail. Not a wild raging beast, but a domestic animal wanting. The Hebrew word is behemoth, the vocabulary of wanting again. Ours, the collapse already happened. He speaks from after it, after the fail. So we would see that the Hebrew from verse 3, envy and jealousy are one word field in both language, which is why the psalm can be read as rage. The tell that it is envy and not rage is verse 13 when he said, in vain I have kept my heart pure, where the grievance turns out to be his own unpaid wages, since we keep on seeing the payment systemology or the Paulian verbs. And people may say that this psalm is about theodicy and the prosperity of the wicked, not about desire generally, but the proportion of verse 17, which is, then I understood the final destiny, is settling the justice question in half a verse. And the remaining 11 verses are about what he now wants. Verse 22, the psalmist's own post-sanctuary verdict on his earlier state is not, I was right, but impatient, but rather that he was a brute beast, a domestic animal wanting. That the psalm itself names the disease, and the naming is not rage at all. So when we try after thinking about all of that, we would see that the standard advice for us when we have a certain unprecedented desire, a desire that feels like it is without an end. The advice is desire God more, want Him instead, redirect your heart. But generally, this is not actionable. It never is actionable, and the whole psalm is about that idea. If the psalms are a device for producing the correct feeling, they fail for the people who need them most. For that, most people do not have that feeling. Most people cannot fake that feeling, and you would see that desire is never direct. You have known 3,000 years before anyone wrote it down properly that the way we think about desire is that to look at desire and know that it is never direct. You may have never once wanted anything but by yourself, if always, and it always comes through someone. And when desire is copied, then wanting something in a lesser sense is not on the menu, and neither is redirect by force into looking at God. Look at Psalm 115. It says, those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. It's not a warning about status. It's never is a warning about anything related to that, but rather it is the physics of persons. It explains to you desire, what will, like, in, do. It's not a feeling to be generated, it's an address to be set, and it is a name for a person toward another. And in the Psalm number 73, it says, "But as for me, my feet had almost slipped. I had nearly lost my foothold, for I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." For he's not describing envy again. Envy is nothing but copying. Rage at injustice does not need anyone to copy. He is describing the envy because one's appetite that cannot exist without a model. And the 16 verses next to that all talk about the same thing over and over again, into settling it into the idea of, surely in vain I have kept my heart pure, and I have washed my hand in innocence. This is what decides that it is about wanting and never about justice. It's a complaint, but rather not that the wicked are hurting anyone, but rather that his own purity brought him nothing. This is not moral outrage, it's just a wage dispute, it's just injustice hidden in desiring something that the wicked has. In vain I justified my heart. He had been running his own righteousness as a payment scheme. I was senseless and ignorant. I was a brute beast before you. It's a known distinction of a verdict delivered in a state that he was just in. If the problem had been righteousness being angry at injustice, he would have confirmed it and told him to be patient. But it does not. It tells him that he was Ktinidas, he was a cattle, and an animal is precisely that thing that wants without knowing why it wants. It has instinct. He goes on and says, "When I tried to understand all of this, it troubled me deeply till I entered the sanctuary of God, and I understood their final destiny." This is what breaks everything. It's just God who breaks it out. The thing that turns it not into an argument, but rather a location where you look at as a final destiny, where you are troubled, not looking just for answers, but for something to desire. What changed in this verse is that he changed what was in front of his eyes, and desire followed the eyes. Instead of looking at another, he just looked at God. We can then ask another question. Then, this is not just mood technology, for when you look at Psalm 88, it should not exist if it was the case. If the Psalms were a device for feeling better, that should be the case. But if you read it, you would see that darkness is my closest friend. And that is the last line. There is no turn, no resolution, no lifting up, no resolve. Psalm 88 is a man speaking to God with nothing good to report and no improvement at all to show. He is just aiming and directing his gaze toward God. That's the strongest evidence that these things are not about generating a state of feeling. And the third one is one of my favorite Psalms. My sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. God, you will not despise the innocent. Because technology that requires you to arrive in a certain condition is useless exactly when you need it, because you cannot control who you are, but you know what you are. You are just a broken heart, a broken thing. The entry requirement is something that we already have, even when there is nothing truly in our belongings. The Psalms tell you what you should do. It does not end where you expect it at all. It says, "Whom have I in heaven but you? And earth has nothing I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." Well, he does not say the wicked turned out to be miserable. He just says that he does not say that he stopped wanting. He says his flesh and heart will and may fail, which is knowing the appetite. But then he is capable of talking, he is capable of reframing it. For that the Greek word of may fail is a verb in the past, exilipian. My heart and my flesh failed, and rather the Orthodox psalters carried it. Not a risk he's warning you about, but a collapse that already happened and will always happen. You are being formed into the shape of something right now, and that is a given. Not eventually, not if you get careless now, by whatever is in the slot in front of you now, but by whatever you're trying to do according to the law you did not consent to and cannot switch. But the question is never whether you are copying it. The question is, what are you copying? This is the only leather that you have. For the whole psalm in itself, in a way or another, shows you that usually when we despise others, we look at what they have and then we compare it in a way that may feel like justice. But it is never about justice, for if it was about justice, we would be angry about the action itself, but rather that we are angry about and envious of the wicked, seeing the peace of sinners. And then the resolve would be slowly understanding that it was not just about the justice or the judgment, but rather to turn away our gaze from what we already thought is the thing that we need to look at, toward God. For that when we look at God, we stop desiring the wrong things. We just desire and mimic Him in His action. And that's another argument for the incarnation. Because whom have I in the heavens? And what on the earth did I desire but thee? But he, for he is the creator of heaven and earth. And that is the whole psalm that you can read for yourself and see the picture all on your own.